Development District. Talk to you over email or over the phone or in person, so it's nice to finally put real faces to everybody's face. So yeah, I'll turn things over to Jen to give us a kind of a kickoff and introduce herself.
All right, well, thank you. Like I said, I'm Jen Sis, Director here at Stratford Regional Planning Commission. I know we have a lot of new faces, a lot of folks that we've worked with on a regular basis in the past, but several that we're new to working with here. So just as a little introduction, Stratford Regional Planning Commission is one of 9 regional planning commissions in the state of New Hampshire. However, there are only 2 regional planning commissions that double as economic development districts, ourselves and the North Country Council. There is one other economic development district in New Hampshire, and that's the Regional Economic Development Center. Primarily focuses on Rockingham County and Eastern Hillsborough County. So yeah, one of 3. We're also the newest economic development district in the state of New Hampshire. Economic development districts are designated by the U.S. Economic Development Administration. I want to acknowledge a couple other folks here. Oh yeah, thanks, Mike. I'm gonna steal your first slide. So just want to recognize a couple people. Michelle Mears, who is not here today, but will be joining us in future meetings. Michelle is a former staff member at Stratford Regional Planning Commission, and she was here in 2015 when we achieved our designation as an economic development district. She was one of the original authors of our first comprehensive economic development strategy. So it was part of her work and my predecessor, Cynthia Copeland's work, along with Dennis and several other folks around the region who made those overtures to get the region designated. What does this mean? It opens up some additional avenues for economic development resources for our communities and organizations. And so kind of why were we designated in 2015 and that today is the first ever formal strategy committee? It was a little bit of a bumpy road to get to this point here today. While we were designated in 2015, we weren't formally included in EDA's budget as an economic development district until 2021. And that's when we first received our full partnership planning grant to do what we're doing here. And we all know 2021 where we were. It wasn't really necessarily a focus to sit down and play with our bylaws and make some administrative things. We were really more focused on our connections that we had and moving forward into kind of helping communities work through the pandemic. And so now here we are today. I'm also going to recognize James, who was here. James is Mike's predecessor, and James was here in the economic development role, kind of helping get us through the pandemic. And so now here we are today. And so we had some time to kind of come up for air, work through some amendments to our bylaws, formalize the strategy committee. Strategy committee is something that comes with those federal regulations for an economic development district. And so doing some work of reaching out to folks, building some capacity, and here we are. So with that, I'm just going to say a huge thank you to everyone for joining us here today. Really looking forward to this process, and we'll pass it along the line so you can all introduce yourselves.
I'm Michelle Shepard. I'm the CEO for the Granite YMCA, and you will know the Granite YMCA from our locations we had in Rochester that we currently have in Somersworth with Child Care, was formerly their Somersworth Early Learning Center, and also our Camp Coney plant in Rochester. And we're obviously, we've actually benefited from partnerships due to these funds, and we're an EDA funded organization also nationally with the Regen Valley Tech Hub. So it's wonderful to be able to sit here and think about how we as the Y can think about strategically doing services here, not necessarily building per se, but we've also been very strengthened by SMBC as well. So thank you for that. So great partners already in the room, the school district as well.
I'm Darren Rourke. I'm the president and COO of Wentworth Douglas Hospital.
James Burdine, City of Dover Office of Business Development. If you want to just view, we did have a few in-person strategy committee meetings back in the day, but
Working
it wasn't,
bylaws.
it wasn't formalized quite to this extent.
No.
It
Sure.
feels very weird to be on this side of the table after so many years on the staff side, and I promise I will do my best to not talk about how we did things back in my day too frequently.
I'm Joe Friedman, the chairman of the Durham Town Council.
My name is Bonnie McNair. I'm the president of the Somersworth Community Chamber of Commerce and recently joined City Council for some time.
John Sham, the superintendent of schools in Somersworth, and very excited about being involved in this regional collaboration at a time when universal public education in the state is very much in flux, and how that lands is, I think, will be critically important to all of us.
Hi, my name is Rob McGann. I'm the VP for Student Success and Enrollment at Great Bay Community College. I have a very similar interest in workforce development and how we can better integrate into the larger community to support the various needs that are there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Immel. I'm with the State of New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs, Division of Economic Development. I'm just here. I'm a business resource specialist for the Seacoast. I work with businesses, and I'm just here to represent the state and see what's going on in our communities.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Berkey. I'm a commercial banker. I've financed a lot of projects in Stratford County. Recently left Newburyport Bank to bring a new bank to the market that was founded in Burlington, Vermont back in 2022. So I'm the president of a bank called the Business Bank. We are strictly commercially focused and will continue to do a lot of good work in Stratford and Rockingham County.
I'm Dennis McCann. I'm the Executive Director of Stratford Economic Development Corporation and local government.
John Randolph, CEO of GSD Communities, as well as I'm representing my wife who's trying to get her EV to accept a charge right now in this cold weather. Maggie runs GSD Design Studios and works on a lot of projects for the county.
And I'm Margaret Joyce. I'm the president of the Greater Dover Chamber of Commerce, and I'd say we work collaboratively with the city of Dover to support their economic development.
Hi, Ernie Groveling. I'm the town planner for the town of Barrington.
Hi, everyone. Shannon Rogers. I'm at the University of New Hampshire. I have a couple hats there. I'm serving as the interim program team lead for the Community and Economic Development team in Cooperative Extension. I'm also a faculty member teaching community economics in our planning program.
My name is Lee Nitwig. Just moved up here from Philly. Started this week at the City of Rochester as an assistant director of economic development, working with Mike.
Hi, Mike Scala, Director of Economic Development for City of Rochester.
Thanks all in the room. We're gonna turn it over to the folks on screen to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Tori. You can hear us?
I can, thanks. Tori Jennison. I am a Dover resident and the executive director at the New Hampshire Public Health Association. I also chair the advisory council for Stratford County's Cooperative Extension.
Thanks, Tori. We'll do Dave Walker next.
Yeah, hello, Dave Walker. I'm the executive director at the Rockingham Planning Commission.
Thanks, Dave. And then we'll do James.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Rather with Southern Maine Planning Development Commission. We're your counterparts right across the border in Maine, serving York and Southern Oxford County. So thank you, Mike and Jen, for inviting us.
Thanks for coming, James. Also on the screen, we have Natalie Gemma. She co-leads some of the economic development work with me and Jen at the EDD. And she may jump in for certain parts of the presentation as needed. Yeah, so I think we can get started. So for folks who aren't aware, just logistics-wise for today's meeting, we're a little behind. Hopefully this is the meeting where you hear me talk the least. I'm hoping that future meetings can be a lot more engaging throughout the entirety of it. We did set up a little kind of orientation, building off some of what Jen shared, to talk a little bit more about what it is we do at the Economic Development District, the EDD, and what the strategy committee does. So your role and then how it supports the comprehensive economic development strategy, which is this big flagship plan and vision for economic development in the region that gets recreated or reworked every 5 years. So we are coming into a time where we are working on that new 5-year plan. We've started some engagement efforts with some of our partners and stakeholders back in 2025 as we were working on formalizing these bylaws to bring you all together. And now we're really excited to work with you all to get a little bit more feedback that can help us shape what the vision is for the Stratford region related to economic development for the next 5 years. So over the course of these next handful of meetings, we're going to get some feedback from you. Today, we have 2 activities that we're interested in kind of building on some past feedback of. And we will take all of that and work with you all to tease out what our goals are. And then there also may be some opportunities for you all to review some draft material ahead of some potential, ahead of our adoption of this new plan in summer. So we will have time for a break as well. We'll still make sure we have that. For folks who aren't aware, there is a bathroom. If you go out this door, you turn to the left, and then there's a sign, you turn to the left again. Feel free to jump out if you need to take a phone call or do whatever. Yeah, we can get started. So we will jump right in. I will see if I can get the slides to this. I will give a little bit more of an overview about our organization. So I'm apologize in advance for the potential for acronym soup, because we are a government agency to some extent. So the Stratford Regional Planning Commission wears many hats, like Jen had noted. We do land use planning and assistance for our 18 municipalities in our region. We work on different environmental and housing planning related things as well. We have a very strong data and GIS team that releases some fantastic analyses of federal and state level data. If you haven't checked it out, definitely take a look at our data snapshot. It could probably answer any data related question you have for the region with some great visuals and charts as well. We are a federally designated metropolitan planning organization for transportation as well. And then this is all in conjunction with our work as an economic development district. So when talking, I'm going to try and navigate these wires. When talking about our region, the Stratford Regional Planning Commission region encompasses all of the communities within Stratford County, 2 communities in Carroll County, Brookfield and Wakefield, and 3 communities in Rockingham County, Northfield, Nottingham, and Newmarket. The Economic Development District, because these lines were drawn by someone else, does not encompass our entire area. So when we're talking about economic development strategy and the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy report, we're only talking about the communities that are highlighted in this teal color. So it's just the communities in Stratford County and our 2 communities in Carroll County. So what is our responsibility as an economic development district? So one is to maintain the SEDS, which is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. But then we also do some other work on special projects, providing technical assistance to communities, doing kind of broader economic development planning within some of our other work, and then also hosting opportunities for engagement and collaboration amongst economic development stakeholders in the region and beyond. So the structure of our economic development district follows this hierarchy, just so you all know where you slot in this structure. So we are governed by our board of directors. Our board of directors also acts as our commissioners, which lead our regional planning commission. They are the people who have the final say on voting to adopt things, like the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. The next step down is you all, the strategy committee. And your role really is to provide the diverse perspectives that you all have and the expertise that you all have to fuel the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. What is happening in your industries? What's happening on the ground? What's happening with the businesses that you work with at the chamber level, at the city level? What's happening to your workforce? All of these different things are the perspectives that we're asking from you all as we come together to try and shape what the goals are for economic development in Stratford region. So that is kind of where you all slot. Now, you may have noticed in the packet there were voting and non-voting members. This is, a technicality of our work and our bylaws. When it does come time that we have a robust draft of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and we are ready to present it to the board of directors for release for public comment and for their There are, formal votes that go around the room, and the voting members will have an opportunity to say yay or nay, or we need to do some edits. So that's kind of where that voting and non-voting piece came from, in the packet. So then the bottom of the hierarchy is kind of all of our other work that we do related to economic development. So I've talked about the SEDS a little bit, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. That is the acronym I hope you all learned first if you're not familiar with it. And just to dive a little bit deeper into what the SEDS is and what it needs to include is, like I said, it's basically the vision for economic development for the region, with key goals called out, actions that we can take as an organization and that our partners can take as an organization to meet these goals, and then also a list of priority projects. Priority projects are things that get submitted by municipalities, nonprofits, and they need to align with the goals that you all help create in the SEDS. When something gets submitted as a priority project, it opens itself up for eligibility for certain Economic Development Administration grant dollars. So it is very important that the goals that we create are reflective of what we want the region to look like, because it does, provide some direction for the types of projects related to economic development that different entities might, put forth for our consideration to go into the plan. And then that opens them up for some potential Economic Development Administration funds. Now, there's no guarantee of funds when a project gets put in there into the SEDS, but it does also kind of show that a project, fits in with a regional vision for the future, shows that there's been some thoughtful considerations for it, and it does help strengthen any application that project might take outside of the Economic Development Administration to, pursue funding. So even if something does get put into the SEDS and it's not funded, it's still very valuable to have it there for any, dollar that people are trying to pursue. So the SEDS really acts as a summary background of the economic conditions in the region, demographics included. It includes a SOAR or a SWOT analysis to show that we've engaged with different partners and expertise from around the region. And we'll talk about this more because this is part of the activity we're going to do today. It includes strategic direction, a vision statement, and an action plan. So those are those action items that are related to the goals that we create. So what are the different steps we and our partners can take to get to these different areas, to reach these goals? And then it also includes at the end an evaluation framework to see how we're doing in that priority projects list. So the SEDS, like I had mentioned, is fully updated every 5 years. We are going into 2026, and our 2021 to 2025 SEDS is now, in the past. We are creating this document for the next 5-year vision that will go through to 2030. Every 1 year, we still do release like a mini SEDS. It's more of a progress report of how things are progressing within the 5-year SEDS. So in 2025, we release 2024, etc. But when it comes to our timeline of how we do this work, typically the year prior to the date of the SEDS, whether it be the 5-year update or the 1-year update, we do a kickoff with the strategy committee. We're a little late this time because we were reworking the bylaws. We do our work for the first 5 months of the year, and then we always plan to adopt in June. So we always try to have our work done for the development of the full 5-year plan or the 1-year updates for adoption in June, meaning it's complete in May so that the public has 30 days to provide their thoughts on that document. So diving in a little bit more into your role. So this language here is taken directly from federal law for what it is the strategy committee needs to be, and it must represent the economic interests of the region. And it must, be comprised of people who contribute to and benefit from improved economic development in the region as well. So we reached out to all of you because of your diverse perspectives, working at the municipal level, working in organizations and nonprofits, working in the private sector, having workforces doing work, being housing developers, all of these different areas, so that we can get your insights to guide the SEDS. I talked a little bit about the voting, non-voting piece already, more of a technicality. And then moving forward, because of the way our bylaws are structured, like I said, this is the meeting where I hope to talk the most at you. But due to the way that our different committees are set up, we would like you all to consider if someone would like to be a chairperson for this group or a vice chairperson. That role does not come along with any meeting planning. All it is you make sure that myself and others stick to the agenda and ask for motions to advance the agenda. So just ask that folks consider that so you can check that box off. Yeah, so any questions? That was a really big speed run of what an EDD, an Economic Development District is, and what a SEDS is, and what you all hopefully will be able to work with us on moving forward. So I know that that was a lot, but just wanted to make sure there's time. Yeah.
Michael, is that time frame normal for you, January?
Yep, so that's our typical update cycle. The 5-year, we typically start work a little bit earlier, so we've done some engagement with partners already back in 2025 for this 5-year update, and we're hoping to gather your feedback today to add to that and build on it. But typically, a good bulk of the work happens in that 5-month period. Yeah, good question, thank you. Anything else? There is a pop quiz. Okay. Any questions, just stop me. So, now just checking the time, how behind are we?
Only by 5 minutes.
Okay.
Margaret, I just want to mention, you asked about like starting early, typically earlier than January. And we have been, as Mike said, have been doing a lot of patient engagement. So far we've done a regional-wide survey. You and Mark and several others in the office did several different cabling events throughout the region, at some of those larger gatherings, and some were involved. You've been visiting planning boards throughout the region. We had, amongst our commissioners and municipal staff and other partners, had a big brainstorming workshop. So all of that high-level summary of what we've heard through all of that outreach so far has been compiled into the notes on the SOAR that are in the packet. So it's only a couple pages, there was a lot that fed into those couple pages.
Yeah, and in addition to that too, we did host an event in April as well that brought together some key municipal partners and other partners as well too for an in-person event. So, great. So now we're hoping to move on to the first of 2 activities where we, hear from you all. This is really more of a brainstorm session, so there wasn't really a program to be prepared for this other than open up the packet that you have in front of you now. If you didn't get a chance to review it, our past SEDS from 2021 to 2025 was divided into 9 different key areas. We did not have an explicit overall vision statement for the region, but we had these 9 different thematic areas that really collectively together laid out what the vision for this region would be over this 5 years and today. So in the packet, I'm not sure the page number, I know the 3rd or 4th attachment in there, we pulled out these 9 different areas. And we're hoping to have a discussion with you all today about what feels relevant still from these 9 different areas and the 1-sentence summaries that come along with them. Do all of these areas still feel like things that are priorities for the region? Are there things that should be prioritized more? Are there things that should be prioritized less? So I'll give folks a second to review the different themes that we've laid out here. And while you're doing that, I am going to briefly mention the different lenses that we looked at everything in these SEDS with. So when this SEDS was created back in 2021, there were 3 lenses. We have to whittle it down to 2 in 2025 for reasons that I'll get to. But the 2 lenses that kind of moved forward throughout the entirety of this past 5-year SEDS was resiliency and partnerships and collaboration. So within these 9 themes, we made sure to have conversations and identify different actions that we could take that would promote these areas in the packet, and then also cross with resiliency and crossed with partnerships and collaborations. When the SEDS was created, there was another lens for equity and environmental justice. And due to some changes at the federal level, when current administration came in, there were some changes about language that we could use and focus areas that we could have. So we did have to strike this one from our one-year update at the very end in 2025. We can still have these conversations because they're important considerations for economic development, but we just can't be as explicit. So that's why I'm only mentioning kind of two that were the main focus for that last one-year update. So that is how the SEDS from 2021 was structured within these 9 different areas.
That's a quick question, just to get some context.
Sure.
So 9 areas, they'll make perfect sense.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of them.
Yes.
So I'm curious about who does the work of implementing all these things?
Yeah.
Is there any consideration given to determining what the capacity is to achieve any of the goals that are identified in this 21, 25 set of priorities? Because they're all good, but can you do them all at the same time?
Right. Do you want to go?
Sure, I can.
Yeah, please. And James, I'd say you can feel free to jump in as well. So it does create a bit of a diffuse action plan by having 9 of these. So when you look at the prior SEDS, there's not a lot of depth in the actions behind any individual thing because the actions are spread across the 9. When we say actions and who are the implementers, there are, within the SEDS, there are actions that we as SRPC will lead and conduct. Those are typically focused on things that are within our jurisdictional framework. So they're going to be technical assistance, resources, working hand in hand with municipalities, and building partnerships to advance other ideas that might be beyond what we do as planners. That's where partnerships with like SCDC and other organizations around the table really come into play. Beyond that, then, that's where the project solicitation comes in, where municipalities and nonprofits can submit projects, and those projects have to align with each of the thematic areas or goals of the plan. I think one of the challenges that we face there is there isn't necessarily that drive to implement those projects because they're other people's projects that they submit in. So that's one of those challenges, and that ties in part, I think, to the discussion where you had about making sure that we have an evaluation system in place, and so that's another piece that we want to look at in a little bit more depth in this iteration.
So the projects you're describing, are they more proof of concept type projects, or are they designed to create wholesale change?
There's full range. We'll have projects that like you said, are more conceptual in nature. We'll have projects that are very concrete. Like, I don't know why those ones coming, the farm museum, looking to do some renovations, like that's something that was submitted as a project. So full range. We'll have water sewer infrastructure projects that municipalities might have. We even had some cross-pollination of project listings, where a municipality might be working on a trail network or a downtown improvement project that includes some streetscape improvements, where they might bring that like broader project in here, but also be submitting for transportation alternative funds from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation to actually do the construction work. So there's a bit of a range.
Yeah, so just some examples of projects that were in our past sets kind of build off of that. I don't know if it was listed in our latest one-year update, but Barrington sidewalks were in there as a project because there was an economic development tie back to that. Things like sewer extensions at the municipal level have also been included as projects because they do tie back to these goals for economic development. So there could be quite a broad range of things. The Farm Museum is a great example of another piece as well too, to bring in economic development to a specific part of the region. So,
yeah, I just wanted to sort of speak to some of, I guess, what was going through my head when we were deciding on the themes in the last update, because this was, I think, at least 2 or 3 more than we had had in the prior 5-year update of this as. Some of it was a separation of, yes, there may be certain categories that we focus on for implementation, but also there are some categories that we wanted to include for analysis purposes because they were important to the story. Also, the context is important. We started on the last 5-year update in December of 2019 or January of 2020, and then we paused it in February, March because of COVID, and picked it back up in spring of 2021. So something like business operations had not been its own category previously, but because of the time we were in and the context of when this was written, we were having so many conversations about business practices that were changing so rapidly, from the rise of remote work, having to figure out supply chain disruptions to a greater extent than previously, curbside pickup becoming a thing. We felt that in that moment we needed to sort of talk about those things as a category independent of just economic growth, business health, business attraction, that sort of thing. I think we also, age friendliness, workforce and education, and childcare, I think were also categories that we had workforce and education previously, but we were sort of adding those other categories around it and making distinctions in a way that I think made some sense to us at the time, but also we never clearly and firmly established kind of what counts in which bucket. There was definitely some overlap between them. So I think that's one area where, yes, all of those things in my mind are still absolutely important to keep in mind and discuss, where I could see the names of categories and what buckets we decided to make official as themes, kind of blurring and recombining those to consolidate a little bit.
Yeah. And one other thing I will add just while we're on that thread is we at SRPC, like I said, wear many hats. So the SEDS can be complementary to our other long-range plans that we create. So we do create a long-range transportation plan that talks a lot about certain types of infrastructure and safety. We do create our long-range regional plan. We're in that process as well too. That talks a lot about the land use priorities, housing priorities moving forward. So that's just something else to think about when you're thinking about what the focus of the SEDS should be on. I will also just touch on the feedback that we've gathered in some of our other engagements so far about these 9 themes is that we could use, it could be useful for a clearer kind of vision statement for the whole region moving forward. But then there's also conversation too about there is room, others that we've spoken to, for some condensing of these themes or compiling of these themes as well. So I just want to make sure that that's clear from what we've done in the past. Dennis, I saw your hand up. You still?
Yeah. I mean, jump ahead a little bit. The purpose of the whole exercise, in my mind, is to become eligible to get federal funds to come in and fund projects which hopefully are in a large degree in conformance with the goals laid out by this committee. But just going back, I think Michelle and I are the two people who've been with this from the start, and maybe Michelle knows about this, but I don't. To my knowledge, you have been the only recipient of EDA funds in Rochester, right? Which was the Milton Road utility extensions. Yeah. And have there been any more projects funded since then?
So I don't think there have been. EDA funds are very competitive. There have not been any funds distributed under the current administration. There's been a pause on that. since that transition. But a very clear vision for the region and clear themes can really help a project move along, from my perspective, in terms of its competitiveness for these different EDA funds.
I should add that, this doesn't, you already brought it up, but this doesn't just apply to EDA funds. It's completely, inconsistent, but there are other federal programs that ask this question. Are you in conformance with this?
Correct.
And you either get more points in scoring or it affects your eligibility. So it's more broad brush than meets the eye. It's not just the one project that get funded, it helped of probably others we're not even aware of.
Right. I know like even Community Development Finance Authority, they're looking to see when they're making community development block grant awards outside of the entitlement communities. They're looking to see does a project fit within a broader plan, and this is one of those areas where an applicant can point to and say yes, it is.
Yeah, so all of that really points to the importance of a clear vision for the region in terms of economic development, clear thematic areas, and from those areas, we can really identify what the things are. So what we'd like to do now, probably for the next 25 or so minutes, is we want to hear from you all any initial reactions you have to these 9 themes, kind of based on the discussion we just had in the background we just provided. What feels like a priority? Do things need to be consolidated? Is anything missing from here that should be a priority when thinking about themes for the region? Just to make sure that we can, typically this is like an activity we would do like on a wall with sticky notes so people can get up and move around, but so that we can include the folks who are online. We are going to just use a virtual whiteboard. So I will take down, any thoughts people have or, things that they would like to share. And I'll put them up on this virtual whiteboard for us all to see.
Michael?
Yeah.
So, in terms of that, do you want more specifics than what is on these 2021 to 2025 themes? In other words, UNH has publicly said about the EDGE that they're focused on aerospace, undersea exploration, and advanced manufacturing. And there's a lot of businesses in this region that are already doing some of that. And it seems like a very promising thing, but I don't see any kind of that in this current one.
Yeah, so anything that folks here want to share, it could be as specific as that.
Well, I would like to add that, and just as a side comment on consolidating those themes from 21 to 25, I think the first 2 you can combine into one, and the mobility and accessibility and age friendliness you could combine into one. So you take 2 off, doing it that way.
Is it any order, or is it just kind of random? There's no hierarchy or?
This is how they're ordered in the sets, but there's no order of importance.
You may also, to piggyback on Joe's comments, be able to consolidate a number of these items here into sort of human capital development.
Yeah.
From workforce development, education to childcare, those are all related.
That takes a lot of them.
It does. Well, yeah, it does
into one.
And I'll say, brainstorming rules apply here. All ideas are right at this point. Or no ideas are wrong, I don't know.
And I will say, if there are folks on Zoom who want to participate, you can use the raise hand function, or if no one's talking, just feel free to come up.
Just have it in the
Oh, yeah.
chat, and they can just directly type it.
Yes, yeah, so folks online, you'll be able to actually, hopefully, just participate yourselves. Yeah.
And maybe just the way I see the world, but I see housing directly impacting 7 of the 9 categories, at least 7 of the 9. One, obviously, the first three, infrastructure, age friendliness, because we got an aging population, and then community vibrancy. At least those 7 directly need housing or are supported by housing.
So would you say that maybe that should be more of a cross-cutting theme or a lens potentially?
I mean, it's tough to grow a business without staff. It's tough to retain people without staff. It's tough to have a childcare without the people that work at the childcare having a place to live. So you can go almost every single one of these. It's hard to even skip any of them. But the reason why certain tracts of land aren't developed is because the infrastructure is not fully there yet. So each one of them tie almost directly to housing.
I guess I would second what John said and recognize that there are already a lot of jobs in this region that have been announced. There were 800 jobs at the Naval Shipyard announced. There were 100 jobs at Subcom announced. And it's like, where are these people going to live? And what kind of places do they want to live in? So it's not all about affordable housing either. It's about hitting the market. And for the jobs that are here already, these companies won't be able to expand if their workers can't live here. So housing cuts right through to the business that way. As a matter of fact, business has probably been pushing for more housing, for additional housing as much as housing advocates.
And I would add on workforce, we've got combined workforce and education here, but workforce housing is something we focus on in this region, Workforce Housing Coalition of the Greater Seacoast. So combining workforce and education, workforce development is one piece of it, workforce development and education, but it's workforce housing, it's access to the daycare so people can go out for childcare and get a job, but they need a place to live, they need a place for their kids to feel safe every day. So I see some separation there, maybe just in the wording or the concepts. So workforce development and education, but John was saying you can't focus on a lot of these things if you don't have a place to live. Workforce housing is key.
I want to add a word about education too, because as it's listed here, that's pre-K through higher education and beyond, but to focus specifically on pre-K through high school graduation for a second, as it's identified here, it's the part about workforce development and good education. But the flip side of that one, kind of not unlike what John said about housing, is you want to draw folks in, they need housing, they have kids, they need a public education system in that community that they are excited about sending their kids to, or other opportunities if they have the resources to do that. And right now we're in the midst of really a socioeconomic resegregation of our school system, where there are not going to be school systems of inequality in communities of color and communities of lower income, in communities with higher numbers of students with disabilities. This is all playing out in the legislation that's been a part of the state for 5 to 10 years, but it's getting significant now. So what that might mean in terms of housing pressures, that if the only places people want to live are Portsmouth and Exeter and Bow and Hanover, because that's the only place you can get a quality public education. The ramifications of what is already a K-shaped economy and polarization are just going to play out in huge ways in Stratford County and the region. But the bottom line being, just let's remember that a pre-K through high school education system is not just about preparing workers, it's about bringing workers with kids into your community to have a community vibrancy in a place that they want to live. They need affordable housing, they need daycare, and they need schools that they're excited to send their kids to.
Is this template standard that you have to use for the beds? Or is this something that was created by the group to kind of coordinate the information you had at the time? Correct. I think that you've got I'd say you're convincing me in my mind, where our thread is, our thread is not just childcare, why, it's also community health and mental health as well as that. And our peripheral involvement as a convener, not as a supplier, but for folks to be able to have access to support that access. So, but when you think about businesses and what they're looking for quality environment, you're looking at economic values and growth, there'll be workforce readiness, which is all the other things we just discussed, including John just mentioned housing and everything else, and then you have the capacity of the regions and then the quality of the environment for the vibrancy. So I have to go to summaries and then I got to draw it, then we go down within the themes that come through on the initiatives that are shared and then towards the project collaboration and awareness. How many businesses actually ask their employees if they can check on the hiring? Until recently they don't, right? Because they don't have a system that works for them to actually support it, to be benefited by that support. And so when you think about what all has to come together in an environment, whether it's a community, a region, or a state, or a country, we haven't really thought that through. And then layered what always falls under the same three things. Just like, there are more great conversations on.
One other follow-up comment about the structure of the sets too is, so the way that our sets is laid out, our former sets is laid out via these 9 themes, so compared to some other comprehensive economic development strategies in the country. Some other EDDs who create sets focus a lot of the conversation about data, the different things that we talk about within these themes. But then instead of centering the themes around the data areas like we have, to some extent, they are much broader with their themes for economic development. There might be 2 or 3 or 4 of them that encompass a really, really big area, depending on, what the economic conditions are in their region. Some that I've seen are things as broad as, promoting economic mobility, things like that. And then underneath that, they have a bunch of different goals for how they do that for individuals and families, for business owners, for everyone within those areas. So just something to think about when thinking about, structure and these thematic areas and different things like that. Mike, I saw your hand up.
I'm just wondering, going through the list, if there's a kind of a sub piece, or maybe it's a major piece about quality of life, quality of place, sort of thing that's important to, because we all agree we want to get, I know my focus is, I want to get families, I want to get younger folks, I want to get, I want to attract people to my community to work, to buy homes, whatever. But, my discussions with them, having that quality of place, the outdoor aspect of it's very important in the Seacoast and New Hampshire in particular. And I don't know if that would have a place in this list, or if you want to put it underneath one of the other.
I think it might actually have been one of the smaller number of categories we had in the preceding sets that probably got split out somehow. I'm not remembering exactly how, but was probably primarily community vibrancy, and then some of the other categories.
I think you're right, James.
Yeah, that's perfect. I was going to say there's definitely a lot of interconnectivity, and also there are some consolidations maybe of themes that could take place, but I was thinking the same with the community vibrancy, pulling out the natural resources, recognizing that they are supporting a lot of the quality of life. And then also tourism is still our second largest industry. I don't know the numbers for Stratford County. We have some assets, but as compared to other counties. So that to me stood out as maybe needing a little bit additional highlighting.
Someone mentioned community health, and I didn't know if they meant the health of its citizens or access to health care is part of community health, or are you talking about the community's, I don't know, fiscal health? But if you're not talking about individuals' health care, I would think that would be an important part of economic development tool, where somebody mentioned schools, they also move to medical facilities that are, good.
Top 4 things in the state by fiscal policy, and others, the conversations that are happening in the UIA and everything else are all housing starts as number 1, it goes to workforce number 2, it goes to childcare, and then health and healthcare, and the access to it and the sustainability of health systems we have number 4. And then that all goes to that whole mindset of what it is we call well-being health. I think that's if we want people to live in the state, to work for our organizations, or be part of the government to help them attract people, it's the general well-being that everyone experiences to contribute in the life that they want to be here. That's a simplistic view of things, but I think the basics, is that what the board is striving for? And finding general transit revenue to everybody.
I'm curious to what degree health doesn't get us localized in terms of just access to healthcare, because it's a national crisis everywhere. Like taking a community, we're living one somewhere with affordable housing is very localized. Public schools are very localized. I wonder if a large number of folks kind of see access to good healthcare as a national problem, varying from state to state more than community. You want to have access to a good hospital nearby, but just the cost of healthcare insurance, premiums, access to doctors. It's an interesting one.
I was wondering if that access, were you meaning of affordability as well?
Absolutely. Awareness to what affordability looks like. But that's, I think, a piece that not everybody understands. Clients how we work with, they don't know that there are resources out there to what a degree they are, and with their willingness to share their need for affordability too. Sometimes they need to then think of themselves or engaging in other ways or programs for employment or funded apprenticeship programs is something that happens. But funding families very well know. That changes people's lives when they have that. And then you have the resources to go around and awareness that there are resources to help them to get to that next step. So if you're looking for community and health and mobility, it's the awareness and the opportunities for those to exist. And this funding comes from, and DOL does do that funding, but it's not as very well known.
Well, since we're on the topic of health, biggest challenge we have in healthcare is everyone wants healthcare, but no one really wants to pay for healthcare. And that's what it boils down to. I mean, we're fortunate to have, I'm not bragging, but Whitworth Douglas is the only, you were familiar with the Leapfrog organization. They grade hospitals on quality of care, and Whitworth Douglas is the only straight A hospital in the whole state of New Hampshire. So we deliver an exceptional care product, and we're a non-for-profit. You know, there's a lot of for-profit hospitals now in the Seacoast, and so so everything we make, we give back to the community and work to support the community. But we have a for-profit insurer in the state called Anthem that dominates the commercial market, and they because they have such a large market share, they recently took UNH from Cigna, which is very unfortunate. You know, they drive what they're willing to pay, and they're for-profit, and they make billions of dollars every quarter. You can see it online, but yet they don't want to pay the people. You know, they don't want to provide cheaper insurance, and they blame the suppliers. So we got fingers pointing every which direction in healthcare. To your point, it's a national problem. It's not a localized problem. But I do, and I'm biased, but I do think that healthcare is the anchor of any healthy community, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. That's just me. But I do think we're fortunate to have healthcare in the community. But I think the more we can educate the community, the more we can promote healthy lifestyles, the more we can encourage people to and that's what it boils down to: eat healthy, exercise, move around, get off your couch, get off your phone. Even though I'm on mine a lot, but I can't help it. Because it's the middle of the day and there's always a crisis, especially on a Friday. But then healthcare costs will go down. You know, we don't need, you know, $2,000 a month weight loss drug. We need people to get off their couch, you know, and those things are all driving costs up. You know, and the drug companies get richer. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on and on, and I won't. But my point is, healthy lifestyle choices lead to a healthier community, but it's important to have the health system here to take care of you when you need it. And if we want to talk about health, then I would encourage us to talk about how we promote healthy lifestyles, because that leads to a better community. And going to the YMCA every once in a while helps.
Well, I work in the streets.
Yeah,
And when there's
absolutely.
living there and access to those resources in schools and physical activity. And not just that, I mean, belonging more than anything, quite frankly. Knowing that there is a relationship that you have within your community at whatever level you need it for awareness, this is affordability, but it's also a sense of belonging to have a voice in it and encourage a voice. So it's so basic, it's unique, but I think it comes when we speak to community health as far as organizations and why not nationally as well as locally, we try to speak to is, are we contributing to betterness in someone's life? and whatever we do. We're a Medicare supplier right now, for diabetes management, we work with physicians actually with us. And it's a small aspect of it, how many people in the room would actually know that that's a referral for a program in the state is funded right now. And then what is the resources that are available. And when you have communities work together and have conversations that we're having right now, as much as it may sound like a month like this, a little bit high in the sky, it does bring awareness and then further collaboration. And I think that's the goal, right? I understand that's what we've experienced is our goal. Summers where there were learning centers, George was shuttered. But it was other organizations recognizing there's a need and then falling around to the right person, falling into place. Hospitals, it's usually could go on in those systems. So system change awareness is for everybody, but it takes courage to kind of make sure everyone to all levels know people we and risk or funding people we don't necessarily know where funds coming from.
I just want to say what you said really resonated with me as well on the healthcare, and I feel like that is the way you positioned it as promoting healthy lifestyles. That to me is low-hanging fruit, is something that we can control and that we have access to, and we have that attraction here, ties back to the tourism. Whereas we don't have as much control over Anthem, you know, the insurance situation. So anyway, I think that is
we don't need any
a
more
great
patients.
approach.
We're good. We want you to be.
We're
we want you to be
good.
We're great. We're overrun. We need people to get off their couches and, you know, live a good life.
I mean, to that end though, and this is, so coming from, what I'm hearing in these conversations is a lot of everybody coming at it from their own lens, which is important to the conversation. But from a more holistic view, kind of, I think the themes are that there are a lot of things that we cannot control right now, like the healthcare system, like all the things that we're struggling with as a community. And I think what it really comes down to is we need to be focusing on how do we support our folks? Healthier lifestyle, yeah, that's great for someone who can afford that. But somebody who's just had their, you know, medical or their food assistance dropped is already struggling to feed their family well. And what's cheaper? What's cheaper? Fresh apples or some canned something with no nutritional value. So I think we kind of have to take it as, what are the things we can control? How do we then promote from the education system, from the business organization level, how do we then promote those healthy lifestyles, those childcare needs? How do we support a workforce housing situation in a time when housing is coming in at market price and people can't afford to live where they work and or get transportation from a place they can afford to where they work? So I think it's a very like holistic, like take it from every different lens and go, how is this now impacting these communities? Because they're all impacting all of our communities a little bit differently. Dover has a different experience than Rochester has a different experience than Somersworth and every other place in this area. But yeah, that's it.
No, I agree. And you can eat healthy on a budget.
Well, you can. I know how to, but not everyone does.
Exactly.
It comes down to
Boils
the
down
education.
And that's how you
Yes.
get to that healthy lifestyle. And don't buy your produce from Whole Foods, buy it from Aldi.
Exactly.
Aldi's got bargain produce, it's cheap, and you can afford it, you know? So we have to teach people, because, and again, I'm not saying anything negative about high schools, but, you know, sorry, I grew up in the 80s, they taught us how to shop, they taught us how to pay our bills, they taught us how to do this stuff in high school, we just don't teach that anymore. You know, I mean, my kids never learned any of that. You know, I'm stuck trying to teach them when they're in there, you know. They don't want to hear what I have to say, you know, they need to hear it from their teacher. Why do I know? I'm an idiot, you know, you know. I'm not alone in the room when I say that, but you know what I'm saying? So we can teach these things to people, and that's part of being a healthy lifestyle. That's part of changing the community, and that's part of making it better. Because we, you know, anyway.
And I think no matter how we split things, there's gonna be feedback between whatever categories we pick, right?
Sure.
You know, social determinants of health, you know, are all of those other things outside of kind of the direct, what is my diet and, my relationship with my doctor that it impacts your physical health just as much, the belonging in your community, the access to things that are fun. Community vibrancy is a big part of that.
One thing I want to just.
I was saying, Dennis has been trying to raise his hand.
I'll let Mike go first.
I was just gonna say, one thing that I want to raise from this exact conversation we had with our commissioners, the board of directors, is they talk a lot about community vibrancy, just the overall sense of place and community, and it sounds like a lot of this leads back to that. One thing too that I want to make sure we don't get lost on in these last few minutes is we haven't talked a lot about the direct kind of like, we talked a lot about what people need in our region, but I want to make sure we also give thought and consideration to some of the business aspects as well too. So sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
Well, I guess I have a good example of what James was just saying. If you look at the age friendliness goal from the last plan, and look at that now, and I'm coming off 3 weeks, in which I kept seeing headlines and parts of articles, but didn't have the time to go read the whole thing. But it all says that, we're marketing come to New Hampshire and young, diverse people are skiing and hiking and doing all these things. That's not who's coming here. It's old people like me coming here to retire, to be near their kids, to be near recreation, the tax climate. I don't think we can stop that juggernaut. So what's that do? That means we have to have more workers who are willing to go up on the roof and take off the ice dams and pump oil, landscapers, medical people, lots and lots of more medical people. You look at the projections just for the state, the number of people going into the higher age categories actually picks up pace fast over the next 10 years. So now we have chains of assisted living centers of various levels who are all licking their chops, looking to get into New Hampshire. And many of them have already started to explore and try to get approvals now to build in 3 to 5 years. So now we've got medical, we've got the workforce. Workforce needs to live somewhere, and creating market level housing like we have tons coming out. That's not going to help those people who are working as assistants in those centers, etc. It's coming, and it's a whole bunch of things we have to deal with. And we can split it up into different segments, but it's good to have it under one topic, I think, so we understand the different relations.
Actually, Dennis did a great job of introducing exactly what I was going to talk about. I mean, we got to face the demographics that we're at 150,000 people age 65 or over in the state. We're going to 600,000. So we're going to quadruple our over age 65 population. That means more visits to your hospital, more falls, more transportation issues. Challenges that we're hearing now is I own the house outright, but my property taxes are getting too high to pay. I'm going to lose my home because of property taxes. But you're also, those people are leaving their prime earning years, so their taxes are going to change. The demographics to the county are going to change. About various numbers, 60 to 75% of them are going to need federal or state assistance to pay for their senior care. So there's only about a 20 to 25% population that can pay privately. That's going to have a huge impact on our tax basis. Never mind the demographics of the workforce changing. You're going from a force that's being supported by those people to that are going to need support. It is going to be a drastic change in the next 10 years.
So let's be prepared for it.
And one of the things John brings up that's interesting is property tax. When you talk about economic growth, I think one of the things we should be considering is continued commercial development, because obviously one of the big drivers of the huge increase in housing costs has been property taxes. When you think about Dover in particular and the impact that the bond for the high school has had on property taxes, it's crazy. So trying to reduce the reliance on, residential taxpayers, I think is a huge consideration that we should be thinking about as it relates to, trying to
move commercial development forward.
Michael, in terms of the businesses, a lot of the issues when we started this conversation are the issues. And Michelle mentioned that, BIA, we meet with them regularly. That's what it's housing, access to healthcare, childcare. These are the issues, and a workforce that's willing to do the work. One of the things I've tried to focus on in our chamber in the past few years, we've kind of created this monster ourselves. We've had a generation since World War II that we've taught kids the only path to success is a 4-year degree, and now we have people with 6-figure student loan and nobody willing to pump the gas or do those things. So that's what businesses need. They need a workforce that feels secure, that they know they've got a roof over their heads. If they have to put their kids into childcare, that they know there's good, affordable childcare nearby. Health insurance, Chambers Health Insurance went up 20% this year. We can't afford it. I can't imagine how all those small business owners do. So those are the economic issues. I don't think we're forgetting it. I think everything that we're talking about definitely feeds into that.
I have a question. Does anybody know if there's data out there for younger people moving to a state, what drives them? What's their number one, number two reasons to go to a particular state to live? Is it about affordability?
Younger people.
Younger people, yeah. Younger people in general. Is it
Stay Work and Play might have some of that.
Stay Work and Play has a bunch of that.
They're tasked with, stopping the brain drain, stopping people leaving New Hampshire. And some of the younger people, one of the things they say, as much as we say the tourism, the access to outdoors, when I worked for the state tourism office, one of the things was people wanted a more vibrant nightlife. Young people want to kind of be where the action is. As they get older and start their families, yes, New Hampshire is more attractive, but right out of school, a lot of them leave the state to go to school and don't come back.
Tying into this, I have a 23 and 26-year-old, one's in South Carolina, one's in San Diego. The one that lives in San Diego is splitting a 2-bedroom on the beach for $2,600. It's not that far off from living in Portsmouth or Dover. And stuff. So why would you stay here if you could go to San Diego for that same money? Stuff. And, the other one went to South Carolina because the school was a lot cheaper, stuff like that. So both of those things are going to drain. I will tell you, in a practical level, we own the 44 tiny homes in Dover. We advertise outside of the state. People will move to New Hampshire if there's a housing and a job associated. What we hear overwhelmingly, we hear from Wentworth, we hear from a lot of medical facilities, we hear from a lot of school superintendents. They offer a teacher a job, they offer a nurse a job, they come up, they house shop, they quit the job before they even show up. If they can't find housing, they won't move here from Philadelphia. They won't move here from all the different areas. If they can find housing, they'll stay, they'll take the job. But I'm just talking to Durham's superintendent of schools, offered 5 jobs to teachers recently. 4 of them said can't find housing, don't want to commute an hour to work, and stuff. So it impacts everything around the room.
I have a 25-year-old who grew up in New Hampshire, went to college in New Hampshire. Total homebody, doesn't care about that nightlife, moved to New York City because he's got transit. And he can walk everywhere, jump on a train, and
my 23 and 25-year-old moved to Chicago because they don't want to have a car. They hate driving. They feel that we are idiots for driving. They tell me that all the time. It's so much wasted time that sitting behind a car, what's the point? Owning a car is a cash drain.
They're right.
They are right. Yeah. They $75 a month and the little CTA pass takes you wherever you want to go,
Or they data about what you asked about, and I think it's probably a little stale. SRPC may know better than me. And the data for the state showed that the one area that was both retaining and attracting more young people was the Stratford County region, more than any other part of the state by far. Now, I suspect that the cost of housing has probably been a detriment to that attribute since then, but I'm not sure. It's like 5 years.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is the most up-to-date statistic. New Hampshire has been for the longest time the highest net exporter of students after they graduate from their, state school. But there is still probably a good portion that just sticks around because of the proximity of where they went to school, if they got a job out in the area too. Yeah. Any final thoughts folks have, for, yeah, Sharon and then Michelle?
Yeah, I was just gonna pick up on the small business. Absolutely. I think all these issues, are things small businesses are thinking about just from the cooperative extension perspective. We have a community business engagement program. We have some other long-term programs, where we work with communities, and we are oversubscribed. So people would love us to come to work with their community to support their individual issues, kind of that one-on-one, long-term program support, and we just cannot meet that. So, I don't know how to describe that clearer, Mike, but maybe like capacity for support. And it's not that one-on-one business, it's more at that community level of like planning and working with the community's economic development committee or other town.
Yeah, so I'm just taking a step back. So part of the reason why we got this money was because we were economically disadvantaged, and that is starting to change. So I think reliance on regional collaboration is going to be key to keeping our Stratford region moving forward. And it's going to be harder to compete with these grants if economics have to do with it. So how do we look at that and still become successful in attracting these grants? I know Manchester and Nashua got a pretty big EDA grant for a tech hub. How do we work with the university to advance that?
I've experienced exactly what she's talking about. Federal programs shifted to, they're not looking at the reality of the K-shaped economy. Lots of people going up, lots of people going down. So when they say, tell us your average income for the area, that's one story. But then tell us your median income for the story. It's a whole different ballgame. And they need to catch up, because this can happen in many parts of the country. And if you ignore the people who are getting pushed down because they can't compete with the people coming in, that's a bad issue.
And our region hasn't got as much of investment as the rest of the state.
Yeah.
So how do we stay competitive?
I think sort of getting back to the built environment and the impacts on businesses. Dover has seen some of our larger single business, employers leave town recently, Liberty Mutual being the largest and most obvious example of that. Also seeing, while I track monthly, data on the size of our workforce, employment percentages. I don't think our unemployment has been over 3% since COVID by those metrics, but it's increasingly seeming to be coming from smaller businesses, sort of more fragmented. We need to go and track our top 10 employers annually for our finance department to put together for information for a bond rating, and we're having an increasingly difficult time sort of tracking in-city employers of over 100 people. I think that is a little bit of data we can use to sell ourselves kind of a problem, and not necessarily an employment problem, because UNH isn't very far away, Pease Tradeport isn't very far away, the shipyard isn't very far away. There are places for Dover residents to work. But I think that shift from more corporate entities to smaller businesses is something to keep an eye on. I think looking at issues that we are having sort of in relation to our downtown and small business community, one of the most frequent questions our office gets at the moment is kind of, what are you doing about all of the vacant storefronts downtown? And it makes me want to pull my hair out. Effectively, there aren't any. The spaces in Dover that are currently vacant are either being held off of the market because it's part of some kind of a development, redevelopment, investment kind of a strategy or transaction. So they aren't looking to lease those units because they want to have flexibility. Or they are immediately post-development or redevelopment, the construction project has ended, and we're finding, okay, it's going to cost $500,000 to build that tenant space out for a business. If it's a turnkey space, we typically have it filled before the business is at closed publicly. So, I think it's been a little bit difficult to kind of, figure out where exactly we stand when we are seeing consistent interest and demand for business spaces in Dover from that small business audience. That entrepreneurship interest really hasn't gone away, and we're still seeing consistent leads, but they're facing increasing barriers to getting into the spaces that we have, and we're getting increasing pressure from community advocates, from housing advocates, from changes in legislation to open up commercial space for housing development and residential occupancy, which I fully understand because I'm on the board of the Workforce Housing Coalition and I understand the need to balance these things. But increasingly, I'm having to kind of raise my hand in these conversations and say, hey, I need that commercial space too. And I can't lose the commercial space that's already online because that is a public good that I can access. And the new stuff that's coming, unless I manage to hook somebody up while it's in construction and I can leverage having the crew already on site and keep the costs down, those new spaces are harder to fill. They're a bigger barrier for that business to be able to occupy.
Great. Thanks all for that. We're a little over time, but I do want to make sure we have a 5-minute break because we've all been sitting for a while. We do have one more activity after the 5-minute break. We might adapt just a little bit for our condensed time, but I encourage folks to get up, stretch your legs, use the restroom, take a second sandwich before we go and put them in the fridge. And I just ask that folks to be back here at 1:37. 5 minutes.
As everyone comes back to their seats, I'm just gonna mention to help facilitate, making sure we still hear everything that you have to share. We're recognizing that we're rapidly approaching 2 o'clock. Walk around and place some note cards around the tables. There's just some stacks of them there. If you have any thoughts or comments from the prior conversation that you want to make sure that we definitely have jotted down, feel free to use a note card for that. And also for this last piece, we'll have an abbreviated conversation, but want to make sure that you are able to share anything that doesn't fit within that time frame. So please use your note card. You can just leave them on the table at the end, and we will collect them.
Yes.
Take it away.
Thanks, Jen. So this next activity is a SOAR, so a strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results activity. And it's really high level. This is a requirement for the SED. We've done this with several groups, and a lot of the feedback that we've gathered so far is compiled in the packet. But we were interested in hearing from you all about what do you see as the strengths in the Stratford region? What are the opportunities that we have? What are our aspirations here? And then what results do we want to see? Obviously, we only have 15 minutes realistically to do this. So like Jen said, if there are any things that you think of related to strengths, opportunities, aspirations, or results for the region, please jot them down. We do have kind of the same collaborative board up here where we can have a discussion about these two and put them up for folks to hear, or for folks to see while we're having this discussion. So we just wanted to make sure there were as many opportunities to get feedback asked. And again, I know that time is tight, so apologies if this feels rushed. But is that clear what we're asking from folks? Just kind of the high level strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and what you want to see for the region moving forward?
Writing them down.
Writing it down, and then if you have anything you want to call out, please call it out. Or we'll just sit in silence for 15 minutes.
So like a note card for each of the 4 categories,
Or you
or
can put everything
put it all
on
on
the
one
card.
card?
Label what it is. Again, we're tight for time, so we appreciate you all being adaptive with us.
Mike, would you be able to put the link of the SOAR activity in the chat?
Yes, thank you, Natalie. Folks online can contribute directly to it. Or you can write things right into the chat. And that link doesn't work. It feels like study hall. Do folks have anything that they want to share along with the whole group for things that you're thinking of related to these 4 categories for the region?
Actually, I'm looking at aspirations and I'm seeing stronger levels of civic engagement in communities, especially in smaller communities, and more community involvement. And I think that's been it's been an overarching trend that it's a dire need now, where we're losing a lot of state and federal and kind of larger entity support at all levels. It's come down to communities really finding how to engage with one another, smaller organizations engaging with one another so that redundancies are cut out and so that resources, which are limited, are shared. So I think a very, very big part of the conversation starts with civic engagement and more community involvement. I think that's going to be absolutely critical to how we move forward. Everybody agrees that these are needs, but I think the disconnect is who's responsible for those needs. And I think it comes down to we all are. And I think getting that message across and getting folks really more centered in that direction is going to be critical to all of this.
Great, thanks, Juan.
And Bonnie, you're saying that is aspirational, or are you saying that we're fortunate to have good civic engagement?
It's under aspirations, and we have some civic engagement, some areas more than others, but, you know, I'm obviously thinking of my experience in Somersworth, where I live, work, everything, and it feels like people all collectively want a thing, but don't collectively agree on where that thing should come from or who's responsible for it.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's in their little silo. And I think that's something that needs to really critically change.
Well, they're on Facebook complaining instead of.
Well, I'm correct. I mean, I'm right there telling them, nope.
I think this ties into an opportunity because over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a lot of silos, nonprofits trying to address housing, for-profits trying to address housing, all these different silos. And this, because of maybe lack of federal funding or even state funding, it's an opportunity for nonprofits, businesses, municipalities to work together to get creative and start to work more as a team versus trying to do things independently and everything. So I think that's either an aspiration or opportunity.
Yeah, certainly. I know that's one thing that we're working on. I sit on the advisory board for the YMCA, and that's one of our big conversations is getting these different groups together and saying, you know, what resource do we have? Why are we all doing the same thing in different areas? We all have the same goals. Let's collaborate and combine our efforts so that we're not, how many different housing organizations do we have? We have a few workforce housing, we have several it's all in the same bucket, so.
kind of stewing on a thought here, which we've already talked about, I think, but is, articulating in more detail a recruiting plan for younger people that suit the workforce needs that we have with our smaller businesses and the larger businesses that are hiring, in ways that are tied to the communities where those businesses are. So that, and then in that recruiting plan includes a strategy on, okay, part of it's housing, it's outdoor recreation, it's nightlife, whatever those things are in the communities where the businesses are that we want to recruit more businesses to, and where the businesses are that are growing. And did that make any sense? Not sure if it did.
It's gonna sound crazy. But as far as an opportunity goes, and coming from me, a fiscal conservative, this sounds weird. I think it's time we reevaluate. I know that the property tax issue is huge. I mean, in every community, and it's getting untenable. I know it's unpopular, but I've never been for a sales tax. But I think if there was some way that we could promote the implementation of a sales tax that's locked in at a certain amount for however long that they can't touch, unlike the rooms and meals, which started off at like 0.5%, 1%, and was supposed to sunset in 3 years in the 60s, and now is whatever, 8 or 9%. I think if you could do that and sell it as a way to fund schooling, as opposed to basing it all on property taxes. And because, what's our second largest industry in the state? It's tourism. If you could, and if you could set something that was lower than all our surrounding states, so that there still would be that incentive for people across the border and buy things, and then put it on almost like a user tax, almost, but those folks coming in to do whatever in the state, coming from away, paying 2 or 3%, which is still 90-something% less than what they're currently paying in their home states. It wouldn't scare people away. It would affect, a few, but in the overall scheme of things, if you could translate that to a reduction in the tax burden for some of these communities, I don't know. That's something I came around. I've never been a big, I'm not saying put in an income tax, I don't support that, but a sales tax, because it's not just the state folks that do it. It's like when they increased the gas tax a few years ago, had been raised since like the 90s or whatever. It was going to shut down trucking. It was going to prevent people from coming here. No one even notices. It would be the same thing with like a minimal sales tax. I'm not talking like a 7-8%, something like even 2 or 3% of the retail sales and of the state, I think would really help. And and then distribute that to the communities. I mean, that's just something that I've been thinking of. Of course, people look at me sideways because sign the pledge. We've got to be desperate times. I mean, we keep saddling these communities and these folks, like someone that has owned their home for 10 years, and all of a sudden they're getting $16,000-$17,000 property tax bills because, if they ever wanted to sell, which they don't, they could get a great number for it because that's what the market's dictated. I think that's unfair. I can say unfair, but it's just, I think there's other ways to fund education, which we certainly need to fund at even a higher level. So, I don't know, it's just a crazy thing.
Mike, to that point, if we think about business tax burdens, like I think we need to start thinking comprehensively about tax burdens for businesses to include the property taxes that they have to pay in communities, and think about which businesses are we benefiting when we continue to lower the business enterprise tax and business profits tax, and which businesses are we disproportionately impacting when then that spending needs to be offset by increases to property taxes that result in increases in their rents. It's definitely something that is pushing the resources and the benefits towards the larger corporate entities and is making things harder for small businesses.
But you'd almost have to tie it to the Constitution. you'd almost have to make it an amendment to your constitution so that the legislature couldn't get in there and take from it. You'd have to make it so difficult and onerous to change that number that they could never get it done. Because they will get in there and they will use it and they will raise it and it will never, it would become, then we become everyone else. I mean, you can still maintain the New Hampshire advantage with a lower rate, but yeah.
Consumption tax.
What's that?
We don't call it a sales tax, it'll be fine. Call it consumption.
Whatever, however you want to.
If you sign,
however
if
you
you
want to
sign the
package
pledge,
it.
you can still support it.
I mean, it's better than a value add tax, like a VAT is, to me is.
I think more people are really starting to think about that too.
Yeah, but no one has the gumption to put it forth. I've seen, there's like 1,000 stupid bills that are out there right now that they've submitted.
You're giving me like palpitations. Like, these are the things that like, when you're like, oh my God, are we gonna put that in a plan and publish it? What's gonna happen if we do?
I'll vote for it. I
I'll take it straight to Concord. I'll be there.
To Mike's point, the legislature, they've taken the rooms and meals tax and done, they're not funding tourism, which is driving the rooms and meals tax revenue. They've taken that and, used it to fund other things. And you say, well, it's on the backs of people visiting the state. Well, not really. Anytime you go out to eat or even get takeaway food, you're paying that tax.
Especially since it's checked off Canada.
John, I saw.
Right, exactly. That's very true. Yeah, we're losing.
30-40%.
Yeah, that's very true.
I wanted, three things. Number one, about public education, we need to rethink it, for a variety of reasons, partly because the system's over a century old and we haven't been able to but also, secondly, there's an aspect of, unfortunately, we no longer think of it as an investment in the education of everyone. We think of it as what we pay for service for our own kids. That's what's playing out right now in this state that has huge implications for where we land and what I alluded to earlier. But thirdly, I'm imagining everybody here knows this, but I say at every opportunity I have that no state does less on a percentage basis for their public school systems than New Hampshire. We are 50th out of 50. And I don't know if all the citizens in this, that's why the Portsmouths and the Bows kind of endure, and they don't like the fact that they get so little from the state, but they're property rich and they're more affluent. And that's why other communities are getting crushed because they don't have the property tax base or they don't have the affluence to kind of make do. And the state is clearly working right now to make that situation worse. And I am among those that think a tax base of some sort or another at the state level is the only way out of this, because it's almost 40 years now since Claremont sued the state. And the courts have ruled 25 times in favor of Claremont and those that this is inadequate. And the legislature and our new governor recently just said, hey, the liberal activist judges, once again, at the New Hampshire State Supreme Court, we just don't, there needs to be money. We can't do donor towns and statewide swept tax. It's been a shell game for 30 plus years. I think that's an important thing to be aware of. And that's just a fact. I'm full of perspectives and opinions, but that one's simply a fact. And it's an important one for everybody to be aware of.
I follow on just on this tax discussion. I mean, in Durham, our taxes went up significantly this year, and they're gonna go up next year too. And we heard from a number of people who the tax burden is becoming overwhelming. They have not received any gains on that wealth. It looks like it on paper. And if the prices go down next year, we're not rebating anybody. So property taxes are taxing wealth that never was realized. And that's the only tax like that in the United States. I mean, income tax, you have to sell something, you have to earn something. Sales tax, you have to buy something. There's been no money to help these families, and yet their taxes go. So I don't know how this group deals with tax structure, but probably not. But it may be a part of economic development.
I feel like it is.
It is the vital part though, because the base, we've got to hear education, and figuring out one piece of it. Because people will move here for good schools. They'll move here for affordable homes. You know, they'll say, well, yeah, I can pony up 600 for that house, but what are the taxes? Oh my Lord. You know, it benefits everything, and it's not all gonna be burdened by the 1.3, soon to be 1.5 million people in our state, because that's what the projection is. So it's not gonna get any better, from a density standpoint. Just a thought.
Any final, yeah, James?
So I wanted to throw out there, I noticed under the aspirations, the bullet for, better and stronger connections between recreational areas and community centers, kind of promoting that stewardship. I wanted to riff off of that a little bit, and say that, I would love for there to be better awareness of kind of the connections and the resources and the vibrant business opportunities that we already have. And that's something that I've been putting a lot more time into over the last year or two than I really expected when I started this job. We put together a whole new platform for Dover for kind of destination marketing, destination development. And it's something that we still have to put in front of our own residents all the time because, as the new businesses come into the downtown, there may be people that don't come and engage with them regularly going, oh, there's nothing down there. Actually, did you know that we have 80 restaurants, 6 breweries, and 2 James Beard semifinalists? So I think taking that down to talking points and promotional strategies for the region, for our communities. Mike, when you're talking about good schools, I feel like this region doesn't have as many of the I'm going to move there just for that school district kind of schools. But we have some fantastic public schools that fly under the radar. I think trying to beat back that narrative of what is a good school, what is a good opportunity, just kind of tooting their own horn a little bit is important. Great.
Thanks, James. All right, well, thank you all. I appreciate it. Sorry to cut the conversation short, but I want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone's time. So I do just want to share a little bit about what next steps are going to look like. Yes. So what we are going to do today, or what we are going to do after today, is take this feedback that we got on these kind of 2 activities and great conversations that we had, along with the compilation of the other feedback that we've gathered over the last couple of months. And we are going to try to tease out what some of the different draft themes could look like for the sets. Ahead of our next meeting, we plan on including these draft themes in your meeting packet for you to review. And we're hoping to have a discussion about your thoughts on those draft themes at the next meeting. So our next meeting will be held at the same time, 12 to 2. Last Friday of the month again, February 27th, here in this room.
Unless someone wants to go host else.
Unless you have an offer for, hosting elsewhere at an organization that you work at or a place that you have access to, but other than that, no pressure. Other than that, we'll plan to continue meeting here in Rochester.
We have a space in Somersworth that would be perfect for this at our CTC center. I am offer that selfishly because it cuts my commute time to a second.
He just likes to walk everywhere. He walks everywhere.
Darren says that's good.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
If folks are interested in, letting us use their space, just connect with me. I'll send you an email, John, and we will let folks know well in advance if we plan on meeting at a different location. But like last time, we plan on sending out the meeting packet 1 week in advance of the meeting with these draft goals for you to take a review of ahead of you. All right. I think, that's it. So thank you all. We appreciate you dealing with some of our, timing, growing pains with this meeting, but we really look forward to continuing to work with you in February.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
On the,